Chapter 121. Silence. Summary. It was funny when the shuddering of the ship face-planted Izuku into the nest. It's less funny now. What the? Is all Mei is able to get out before her eyes are torn from the blinking screens by the violent jolt that sends her lurching forwards in her seat. Startled screams accompany the sound of tumbling bodies behind her. Her grip tightens on the steering as she tries to fight the after effects of whatever force had hit them. But before she can even wrap her head around how the readings she'd glimpsed connected to what had followed, the ship pitches to the side. "Whoa!" shouts who she thinks is Denki, much closer than before. By the time she's regained her bearings once more, one of Denki's hands is gripping the back of the command chair, and the other is reaching for a relatively new button on the console. It takes more effort than Mei thinks it should. Her legs half turned to bendy straws by the new vibrating pulsing through the ship, but she's able to pull herself from the chair as Denki takes her place. Death grip locked onto the back of the chair, Mei watches as an orange shimmer comes to life outside the window. It spreads across the available view like a fractal mosaic until a pink tingle rushes across, leaving seemingly empty space in its wake. Without realizing, an overjoyed grin takes over her face. "It's working!" she cackles. The reaction is immediate, the sporadic jerking of the ship settling to no worse than gentle waves rocking a boat. She stumbles, still a little off balance, closer to the window. It had taken her longer than she'd thought to recreate the pirates' particle barrier at the smaller scale their ship required. Working with only what she could pick up on their brief stops and keeping the power consumption low enough for their ship to handle was a challenge. But with Izuku and Denki's help, she'd done it. "Everyone, buckle up now!" The commanding tone in Izuku's voice had Mei turning around. Izuku was buckling himself into his seat with one hand, a grim expression painting his face, as he tapped through the screens, flickering with fluctuating digits with the other. I'm not sure where it came from. I didn't even know this was possible. The whole cluster system is flaring all at once. The radiation levels all around us are spiking, and supercharged particles are being flung around at near light speed." Just as he said that, a streak of light shot past the window. Then another, and another. Fluid coils of light rushed through the inky black expanse in front of them, branching like plasma in a lamp before blipping out of sight. "Wait, flares? Like solar flares?" Ochako's head whipped around from where she'd been trying to secure herself at the nav station. "What's the solar wind speed?" Let me... Shit, it's rapidly increasing," Izuku shouted. Suddenly, a tug on the collar of her undersuit whipped Mei to the side, and she was half carried, half dragged, across the room at a breakneck speed. "Hurry and get secured right fucking now!" Katsuki hastily ordered, as he pushed her back. A breathless oof was startled from her as she fell back into a seat, and pink hands reached over and clipped the chair's harness into place. And not a moment too soon. The moment she hears the clasp click into place, blinding halos of light arc out from behind, and the world tilts. Crashing. A grunt of pain, flickering lights, groaning metal, tumbling over and over. Streaks of color, panicked shouts, screaming alarms, whining energy, pounding heartbeat, drifting. Silence. It pressed against Mei's brain, mixing with the muddling dizziness. She should like the silence, free from the cacophony of noise that overwhelmed her senses in its chaos. But she didn't, because things were never silent. A silent forest meant something had driven out all the animals. A silent ocean meant the currents and tides had been stilled. A silent city meant that everyone who lived there was gone or dead. A silent ship meant... What was that? Denki groaned, hissing a pained breath before a click indicated a harness being undone. Mei blinked sluggishly. "Don't get out of your seat, dumbass!" Katsuki hissed. Her eyes were adjusting to the faintly lit space slowly, but she could still see Denki rising from his seat, and continue rising as he floated into the air, mirroring the sinking feeling in her stomach. It spurred her into action, Mei fumbling for her harness's release and scrambling out of the straps as its hold loosened. "What did I just fucking say?" Katsuki bit out. But she ignored him, pushing off toward the seemingly innocuous spot on the floor. "It's probably fine now, Katsuki, if we're not being thrown around anymore. I think it's over." Ochako panted, sounding winded. "I'm pretty sure that was a super flare. Or, well, a whole system's worth of super flares going off at once. Spike in radiation, energy-charged particles, and solar winds. Plus that bright light. It all fits." A panel drifted in the air, forgotten as Mei pulled herself further into the exposed cavity. "Wait," Izuku said, something in his voice, tense in a way that would put Mei's hair on end, if it wasn't already. "Didn't you say that the combination of solar flares and coronal mass ejections happening at the same time in super flares causes..." She didn't bother with a screwdriver. Instead, Mei wedged her fingers between the slightly crumpled metal and pulled. Something shaky made its way into Ochako's voice as realization seemed to dawn. "Electromagnetic pulses that can bypass particle barriers, short out engines, and leave ships dead in the void." Colors brushed against the dark shuttle, leaking into the window from off in the distance. The afterglow graced the interior of the ship in almost mocking beauty. Brilliant auroras blanketed the cluster of silent stars like freshly fallen snow, swirled like early morning mist hanging above the expanse of UA's grounds, glittering in the streaking rays of the rising sun. The stars themselves flicker as flaring threads of plasma recede, a field of orange and red fireflies finishing their dance and settling back into the endless black void. "Emphasis on dead," Mei started, hands shaking slightly as she ran her fingers across mangled coils of wire. "When electromagnetic radiation tugs the charges in a generator's electromagnetic coils so hard they crumple into an irreparable mess." There was nothing. No rumble of the engine, or hum of the lights, or purr of the heater, or the whir of the oxygen generator. Silence.